2023 was an unbelievable year for JavaScript and open source. So much happened, so much changed, and so much improved. I want to celebrate the great things that happened in 2023 by going through the biggest ones that had the most impact. So without further ado, let's take a look at the Rising Stars of 2023 in the JavaScript world. Welcome to the 8th edition of the JavaScript Rising Stars, the place to see the trends about the JS ecosystem in 2023. Let's see how a set of UI components you copy-paste took the world by storm. Most popular project overall. ShadCN UI. Yeah, it blew up last year. It absolutely exploded. Almost 40,000 stars in a year. That's crazy. The hottest project of the year is ShadCN UI, a collection of UI components written in React, allowing customization of the styles through Tailwind CSS. Built on top of Radix, a set of headless components providing primitives for concerns like accessibility and keyboard interactions, ShadCN UI distinguishes itself from other popular libraries like MUI, Chakra UI, and React Spectrum by not being a downloadable NPM package. Instead, you integrate the ShadCN UI components through a terminal command that installs the underlying dependencies and copies the component source code directly into your code base for further modification. I have a lot of content about why this is cool already, so I don't want to dive in too deep just yet, but I want to point out just how cool it is seeing this project get the success, recognition, and overall just love that it's been getting. It's an awesome project. We shouldn't have to surrender our UI layer to a third-party library just to benefit from the reusable pieces that so many developers have already built and contributed to. And ShadCN UI found a really delicate balance in this way. Let's look at the rest of the things that found success last year, though, because there's some cool stuff in here. Number 2 is Bun. The champion of 2022 is maintaining its tremendous momentum. Crazy to think that Bun was number 1 in 2022, and it's still holding so strong at number 2 in 2023. Bun aims to be the fast, all-in-one toolkit for running, building, testing, and debugging JavaScript and TypeScript applications. Version 1 came out in September, which is a huge part of where these stars came from. There are so many other cool things that snuck in here. I love that Excalidraw and TLDraw are so close. That's dope to see that 3 and 4 are tools for documenting and diagramming. Y'all know how much I love Excalidraw. I honestly owe it for helping me gain the confidence to present and talk and make videos like the one you're watching right now. I was always terrified of whiteboards because my penmanship sucks. I have pretty shaky hands, and as a result, I don't write good. I hate penmanship, I hate handwriting, and I do not like whiteboards. And I just thought I wasn't the type of person who could think in that way or visualize stuff in that fashion. And then I started playing with Excalidraw, and I fell in love with diagramming. Having a tool that made it that easy to do the low effort feeling handwritten style, it was so powerful for me. And it let me communicate in ways I never had before, so much so that I ended up making videos with it, and here I am now. So huge shout out to Excalidraw. Thank you guys for making such an important piece of software that's helped me find success. And TLDraw, they're pretty cool too. Next.js, what's that? Well, almost like we've talked about that a ton here. An interesting detail is that both Next and Supabase got more stars than React this year. And that doesn't mean React is falling off. Let's be clear. This is more than anything because everyone's already starred React on GitHub, and Next is just taking a subset of React's already existing pie, so to speak. That said, it's crazy to think that React's GitHub growth has actually slowed some amount and is being beaten out by other projects. We also have Tori, my favorite banned word in chat. I don't have anything against Tori. I just don't have any good use cases for it and still lean on Electron when I need a desktop app. I'm excited to see where it goes, especially once the mobile stuff gets a little further along. But yeah, for now, not the most interesting project in the world to me. Drizzle making it into top 10 is wild. I am so hyped for that team. They've been working incredibly hard on building a modern ORM for JavaScript and TypeScript developers, and they've succeeded. Prisma isn't even in the top 10 now, which is huge. But there's one last piece that made it in, just barely, HTMX. Oh boy. Crazy to think that an anti-JavaScript tool has made its way into the top 10 JavaScript tools. Sure, they love that. Anyways, let's dive into front-end frameworks, where we'll see HTMX is the second biggest front-end framework according to GitHub Stars of the year. That's hilarious. Also, Million, which is, if you're not familiar with Million, it's an alternative React reconciler, effectively. So it takes your React code and renders it its way instead, allowing it to be hundreds of times faster than traditional React. It's a really cool project. It's being made by Aiden. Proud of him, doing really cool work. But to think that a React-specific virtual DOM reimplementation is getting more stars per year than Vue says a lot about the culture of hype. I'm not using this to crap on Vue, let's be clear. This is more to point out that the hype around something like Million and the excitement and energy around that is going to drive stars more effectively than a slow, methodical, planned out rollout. Also cool to see that of all of the front-end frameworks, React is still the one growing the fastest pace. Not too surprising, but interesting to see. As I've said in many a video over the last year, I think front-end, the focused all-in-one thing, is going to kind of die out in favor of full stack tools and solutions. Even HTMX, despite only running on the client, is a tool that helps you build better interactions and relationships between the client and the server with good experiences for your users. If you want to know more about HTMX, check out my Truth About HTMX video. It's the best I did last year. But I really don't think front-end specific frameworks are where we'll see most of the innovation going forward, and certainly not where we'll see most of the growth going forward. Full stack solutions are where attention has shifted, and I think that's for good reasons. Also, huge congrats to Svelte for maintaining and continuing its growth. Very excited to see where it goes over the next year, especially now that runes are a thing, and I've heard some rumors about other cool stuff going on. Since React is so big, they actually got their own whole category here with the React ecosystem. It's also cool to see they brought in Sebastian Lorber as a guest writer to leave comments and describe what's going on here. If you're not already following Sebastian, fix that. He's one of my main sources for news in the JavaScript ecosystem, and his This Week in React email chain, as well as threads on Twitter, have been essential for me keeping up. And I'll be honest, I find a decent chunk of my video topics just by keeping up with what he's talking about. So huge shout out to Seb. Check him out if you haven't already. Let's see what he had to say here. 2023, we saw React enter its third era with the advent of React server components. The core team and Vercel collaborated to release the first stable implementation, Next.js 13.4 App Router. Despite leading an exciting innovation in deploying consequent resources, Vercel received its fair share of criticism for its privileged relationship with the React core team and early access to experimental features. I've talked about this a bunch in other videos. I don't love this argument simply because there was a lot of other people who had this opportunity that either bailed early or refused to take it. Vercel's focus on server-side React was so exciting to members of the core React team that they decided to leave Meta and Facebook to go work at Vercel to push this further forward. And to this day, there's only 2 to 3 core React team contributors that work at Vercel. The vast majority are still at Facebook, like 70+%. So I don't think this pushback is particularly valid. I understand why it happened. The vibe of this new company showed up and just took over this thing that we've been using forever and love dearly. But it's not an accurate representation of the reality of what happened here. Sebastian Markbridge, not to be confused with this Sebastian, is the one who's led a lot of the server component efforts at Vercel. And he went there because he wanted to do this. And if I've learned anything talking with him, it's that he is incredibly passionate about making the web better, both for developers and for users. And that all the decisions he's made have been in that effort. And it genuinely kind of sucks to see people upset with him and with Vercel for trying to push the web the way they have. Let's take a look at these packages though, because it's really interesting to see what's been blowing up in the React ecosystem. Obviously, first is Shad CN UI, and I'm honestly really proud of what Shad did here, both in the way he challenged the idea of what a UI library is, and also pushing the bar for accessibility in our tooling forward really far, really quickly. Awesome project. It deserves all the hype. Scaladraw, again, found its way in here. I thought TLDraw was also React-based. I'm confused why Excalidraw made it and TLDraw didn't. I'm pretty sure TLDraw should have been in here. Not a big deal, just a quick thing I checked. Next.js obviously makes sense in here. Zustand, great to see them in here. Absolutely deserved. I'm sure you guys know this already. I love Zustand. I think it's one of the best state management solutions ever made. And now that it's mostly being maintained by Daishi from the Poimanders crew, it's in a better state than ever. I'm really pumped to see Refine in the top 5. I haven't mentioned this before, but Refine was actually in one of the more recent Y Combinator batches, and it's one of the few companies I personally chose to invest in. I'm really excited about what they're doing. Call me biased, but when I saw the project in a sea of bad AI apps, I was actually really excited to see someone who understood what the ecosystem needed, especially on the React and web dev side. If you're not already familiar with Refine, I like the description here. Open source retool for enterprise. Their goal is to make it easy to build dashboards and UIs and the things you need as a company to work with your data. If you're not already familiar with Retool somehow, it's a drag and drop, low code way to build internal UIs for accessing data. So if you want to build an admin panel for a random person on your team to be able to go through invoices and make changes, something like Retool makes a ton of sense. And that's why it's blown up as quickly as it has and become the massive company it is. My CTO actually is an ex-Retool employee, and I poached him from there to work for me at Ping. The idea of an open source version is, as such, really exciting. And I'm hyped to see what Refine has been working on. It's a really cool project. The stuff you can build with it's beautiful. And as mentioned before, it's entirely open source. The whole framework and all the pieces you need to build with it are here, ready to go. And they've built in all sorts of different platforms, UI frameworks, auth providers, and all the other things you would need. So it's pretty easy to quickly combine 5 sources of whatever and get them into a mini little dashboard with good UI components and dashboard stuff already provided. It's a really cool project. And if you're looking to build a dashboard for your company super quick, definitely worth looking into Refine a bit. There's more cool stuff that Sebastian wrote here. If you're interested, highly recommend clicking the link in the description to go finish up that bit, because as always, Sebastian had good things to say. Enough of React. Let's take a look at the Vue ecosystem. Also nice to see a guest writer hopping in for this. Lucy, who's a core contributor of the Nux team, as well as a speaker and open source engineer working at Prismic. Cool stuff. And obviously, if we're talking about Vue, you talk about Nuxt. Nuxt is killing it. It's making Vue more compelling than it's ever been. There's so much cool innovation going on in Nuxt that doesn't just affect the Vue ecosystem, but benefits the entire web dev ecosystem, specifically around Vite and the server rendering stuff that they're building around the Vite world. Super hyped on Nuxt and everything going on in that side of things. Also nice to see other projects built on Vue finding success too, like SlideDev, which is an open source slide creation tool where you drop in Markdown and you get back slides. Really cool. Nice that it's open source and that it's built in Vue. Anyone can go change it however they want. Also nice to see it getting the attention it's been getting. We also have Vue Element Admin, similar to the React admin components for quickly throwing together an admin panel with pre-made components. Nice to see that finding success, as well as Vue Use and Element Plus. An important thing to know about 2023 is that Vue 2 died. This is a huge change because the shift from Vue 2 to 3 was brutal to say the least. There were so many changes that backwards compatibility wasn't really a focus. And as such, a lot of tools in the ecosystem had to pick which side they were supporting or do the really painful thing of supporting both at the same time. Now that 2 is end of life, this two-sided way of living is dead. And the Python 2 to Python 3 chaos of Vue is hopefully in our past. And I really hope that with this, we have a crazy 2024 with way more innovation than we've ever seen in the Vue world. And I have good reason to believe that will happen. Again, if you want to read everything that Lucy had to say here, definitely recommend checking out the whole article, link in the bio. Now let's take a look at the backend and full stack section. Side note for the creators of Rising Stars, I know you're watching this. You could have invited me to be the person who wrote this part. I would have loved to do that. Next year's always coming. Anyways. Oh, there might actually be a reason why they didn't invite me. We got spot number 4. That's really cool. That's so cool. Good stuff, y'all. I appreciate you immensely. It's so nice that my little stack that I made a video about not even 2 years ago now, just showcasing the tech that I liked to use and talking about why, has become a stack that rivals so much other cool technology. It's still so surreal to see T3 and Create T3 app in these rankings, and I have to shout out the community and the incredibly hard workers who have been maintaining that project long as they have been for. We have almost 300 contributors now, and with Julius, CJE, and Nexel leading the charge, I'm really proud of where Create T3 app has gone, and trust me, 2024 is going to be a wild year for the T3 stack, so keep your eyes open for that. And also to see TRPC growing as fast as it is, definitely because of this community and a lot of y'all using it the way you have. I'm not going to sit here and take credit for TRPC's success, but I will absolutely take credit for kickstarting its growth. When I started shilling it as hard as I did, the world woke up to the power of full stack type safe RPC behaviors. And it's really nice to see that has continued well past 2022 and even through 2023. But we also have to talk about the things above and below. Talked about Next a bunch already. Won't dive in too deep. If you want my thoughts on the current state of Next, I have a whole review I did all about the newest version of Next.js and the app router stuff too. We also have Astro, which y'all know I absolutely love. Astro is one of the first frameworks to really challenge the role of a JavaScript framework. I like that it's in the backend category here. It's one of my spicy takes is that Astro isn't a web framework. Astro is a server framework for generating HTML pages that have good interoperability with things like React, as well as all the other tools that we use in the JavaScript ecosystem. It was the first time I'd experienced the niceties of modern web dev while building things the old way with HTML as the output. And I think it inspired a lot of the changes that we've seen in other tools since. And then we have Nest. I don't know who is still starring Nest. I'm sure it's fine, but I'm gonna side with Primogen here and say that long-running JavaScript on the server is not the most reliable thing in the world due to just simply how bad the error management is. And as such, it's hard for me to imagine good places to stuff something like Nest. If you don't already know what Nest is, it's a heavy all-in-one framework for managing your servers in JavaScript. So if you want to build a super strict set of APIs with middlewares that are reused, authentication layers and systems, and a bunch of decorators and classes everywhere, Nest is the best way to do that. It's kind of like a .NET style experience for JavaScript developers, which I hate because I don't like those problems and I don't think JavaScript's the right place to both have them or, more importantly, to solve them. As such, most of the times I would have reached for something like Nest. When I have a large team contributing to a significant backend, I don't find myself reaching for JavaScript unless I can be in a minimal serverless environment. Obviously, things simple as long as you can, but if you can't keep them simple, that's when moving over to other languages like Golang might make sense. The middle ground feels very uncanny valley to me, where either on one side, you're able to keep things really simple, so you do a bunch of minimal JavaScript Express or Next.js type stuff in a serverless environment, or you can't do that, so you introduce other languages with better tooling and ecosystem stuff to make maintainable, scalable, reliable software. The middle ground where Nest lives is just not something I particularly understand or see too much value in personally. Clearly, a lot of people do. I wouldn't get asked about it all the time otherwise, but every time I look at Nest, I just want to pull my hair out. So it's not for me at all. Anyways. This is one of my personal favorites, build tools. Obviously, Bun won by a lot, but Vite did really well this year too. And I should talk about Vite more in my content because it is really cool and I use it for a ton of stuff. If I'm spinning up a single page app, I'm using Vite almost always. It's in a really good state. It was created by Evan Yu, the Vue creator, because he wasn't happy with the state of the Webpack ecosystem and how miserable it was to spin up a Vue project. So he made Vite to build on top of what was going on with ESBuild, which was written in Golang, or to make a better set of tools for production web application development. The result's great. It's become the standard for a reason. And even if I have disagreements with specific implementation details and decisions, it solved so many problems that we deal with it. And I'm really happy that Vite has come out and found the success that it has. Speaking of bold rewrites, we should probably talk about Biome. Biome is an open source fork of the open source project/company Roam, which kind of burned and fizzled out at the beginning of the year. The goal of Roam and now Biome was to, similar to Bun, rebuild all of the pieces in our tool chain for modern web development. Things like Babel and Webpack and Prettier and ESLint, all written in JavaScript, was not necessarily the best decision. And Biome was focused on rewriting the core pieces from scratch with native languages, specifically with Rust, to make a better experience for all web devs. Biome has focused in specifically on the linting and Prettier side of things, and they actually were the ones to collect the bounty that I made a video about before, trying to rewrite Prettier from scratch, and they hit over 95% compatibility with their Rust binding that is comically faster. Really proud of the team. Pumped it's been finding the success it has been. Hope they continue to get stars and recognition because efforts like this are so important for the future of web development. I just went to the website for OXC because I'll be honest, I'm not super familiar with it. And it was way too hard to get to GitHub from here. I had to go here and then click GitHub there, which made it harder to go find in stars. I wanted to give this a star. Currently sitting at 6.7 thousand stars, and I'm proud to be one of them now. So what is this project? It's a collection of high-performance tools for JavaScript and TypeScript, specifically focused on building a parser, linter, formatter, transpiler, minifier, resolver, all in Rust. Same philosophies as Biome and Rough. JavaScript tooling could be rewritten more performantly, and it's an integration toolchain that can tap into efficiencies that are not available to a disparate set of tools. I don't know much about this one. I would like to look into it more before I say anything stupid, but it looks like in December specifically, it started to find a lot of traction. Yeah, it was created in February of 23. Makes sense. I'm excited to see where this goes. It's honestly awesome to see so much effort being put in to rethinking the tool chain for JavaScript and having multiple projects with OXC, Biome, and Bun all rethinking this from scratch. I'm hopeful that we'll have a future soon where we don't rely on the pile of disparate, poorly interoping tools that we currently do. And chaos like making ESLint and Prettier behave together will be a thing of the past for modern web developers. Really excited for any or all of these projects to find success. We also have RSPack here, which is one I probably should talk about more. Seems like most of the attention for RSPack was in March, which is interesting because I feel like I've been hearing about it a lot more over the last few weeks. If you're not familiar with RSPack, it's another alternative to Webpack that is Rust-based. I've seen some really cool stuff jumping on RSPack recently. Specifically, both Discord and TikTok have been using RSPack for a lot of their compilation and transpilation recently. If you are interested in all things RSPack and specifically module federation, Zach Jackson, Scripted Alchemy on Twitter, is the person to follow for that. He's been my only source for all of this for a while, and I know he's going to be hyped that I'm finally mentioning module federation in a video. So if you want to hear me talk about that more for some reason, let me know in the comments. It's not something I'm particularly familiar with at this time, so it hasn't been a focus just yet. That's all I have to say about build tools. Let's move on to mobile. Wait, I wasn't qualified for the backend/full stack section because I was nominated in the ranks. Yet Evan Bacon, who works at Expo, who won this category, is the one who wrote this part. Come on, guys. Okay, to be very clear, I'm joking. No one hit me up. No one said anything. I just made this funny narrative for a video. Don't get upset with me. Certainly don't get upset with people who made this. Rising Stars is awesome. I love them for it. And I know they're hyped for this video. So thumbs up to y'all. Obviously, Expo won. You can watch any of my recent videos that mention Expo to see why. React Native is neck and neck with it. This shouldn't be too surprising as Expo is the best way to do React Native by far, even more so than Next is the right way to do React for web. There are a lot of valid options for building React on the web. I can't think of many ways to use React Native on mobile that make sense that aren't through Expo. They have just built the tools we need to have a good React Native experience, and I highly recommend using Expo if you're building React Native. And if you haven't built React Native yet, Expo is the place to start. I like what Evan had to say here. In 2023, the mobile space made significant progress towards unifying web and native development experiences. This is evident with the top projects of Expo, Tamagui, and NativeWind, which share the goals of maximizing code reuse and increasing accessibility for web developers. There's a clear trend towards better styling solutions in React Native, with Tamagui, NativeWind, and React Native Paper leading the way. If we hit show more here, you can see multiple other projects that have been finding a lot of success. NativeWind basically just lets you write Tailwind in your React Native code. Really cool, lets you share things between projects more easily. React Native Paper is a material design library for React Native. Don't love material design, either the look or the philosophy, but it's cool to see it finding success here. Also, just saw Hermes at the bottom here. I have a whole video about JavaScript at the speed of C. Definitely check that out if you want to know more about Hermes. React Native dominance is evident with 7 of the top 10 projects based on this list. However, the presence of 3 WebView-based projects in this list suggests a lingering interest in deploying websites directly to app stores as is. The 3 he's mentioning there are Quasar, Capacitor, and Ionic. All of them are built to make it easier for you to take a website in traditional web code and wrap it in an application shell so it works and feels like a mobile app. While I'm happy these projects exist for the specific use cases that they make sense, as progressive web apps continue to get better and React Native continues to get easier, I think the need for them will continue to die down over time. And now for everyone's favorite, styling. And we'll see here, StyleX, despite only going open source in December, is already at almost 7K stars. I like to think I was part of why there. StyleX blew up. We all knew and expected that. Uno CSS, which if you're not already familiar, is an alternative CSS engine for things like Tailwind. So you can use this as an alternative to Tailwind, and it runs the JavaScript either in the client to create the right styles or as a build step to generate the right CSS. Cool project. It's created by Ant-Fu. A lot of the Vue community really likes this. Not for me. Pumped it exists though. You'll see Tamagui, which was mentioned before, is a universal kit for both React Native apps and React web apps. There's a bunch of UI components ready to go for you. We also have Panda, which if I recall was created by the Chakra crew, the people around that space, to try and make a type-safe CSS and JS toolkit for building modern UI libraries. I don't know as much about Panda as I do about a lot of the other things here. If you want me to look into it more for future videos, let me know in the comments. We also have Native Wind, which is super hype. As I mentioned, Tailwind on mobile is really cool. It's awesome to see it finding success and getting almost 2,000 stars over the last year. I hope Native Wind and things like it continue to find success so that our mindset can be transferred between mobile and web. While I am not the biggest believer in reusing UI code between platforms, I absolutely love the idea of sharing my mindset between them. When I already know how to write React, being able to go between different projects that target different environments, but carry my React knowledge and my way of building between those, I'm able to build more effectively and make the right solution for each of those platforms. Native Wind is really exciting for those reasons. Vanilla Extract is also a cool project. If you're not already familiar, Vanilla Extract is by Mark Dalgish, who I've brought up a bunch on this channel. He's the one currently pushing Remix in the direction I'm excited about. He also built Vanilla Extract, which is one of the first type-safe CSS solutions I've ever seen. It uses TypeScript and compile steps to generate CSS as a result of the definitions you create, and it does all of this in a type-safe way. So you can create a theme that has these properties, and you can create styles that have things as well. These have to be put in a .css.ts file for it to be compiled and handled properly. Once you've configured your build tools correctly, these all get generated at build, and you don't have to worry about CSS and JS at all, similar to StyleX. I'd even make the argument that Vanilla Extract paved the way for something like StyleX by showing the power of using the TypeScript compiler in build steps to give you good integrations and co-location when you're writing the code, but also the performance of flat CSS files once you deploy the code for your users. Really cool stuff. Love Mark and all the work he has done on this project. And it's cool to see it still getting attention, even though, in my opinion, a lot of the wins have been carried forward in a stronger fashion in StyleX. We also see style components somehow getting stars still. No offense, style components, I just think as an ecosystem, we've largely moved on. And then Kuma, which I've never heard of, Emotion, which I thought was dead, and Linaria, which I've never heard of. Let me know if we need to talk about any of those in the future. And now, my favorite section, testing. Playwright is actually pretty cool. Nice to see them finding success. Puppeteer was good. What was the one before Puppeteer? It wasn't Cypress. Was it Cypress? Whatever. Playwright is the one that I've had the most fun with by far. It's nice that we've built layer upon layer upon layer of headless browsers so that we can finally have a good experience testing our code in the browser. I haven't needed to use things like this for a bit because our tests are much simpler or way more complex. But when you want a traditional integration test where you're rendering the component and making sure things behave the way they're supposed to, Playwright's a really good solution for that. And I'm pumped to see it getting the attention that it's been getting. Storybook, I feel almost the exact opposite about, but I don't want to be too negative in this video, so I need to do a whole video dedicated to why I don't like Storybook. Let me know in the comments. We do need to talk about Vitest though, because Vitest is really cool. Finally, someone is challenging Jest in a meaningful way. Vitest came from the Vite ecosystem as an effort to get out of the Jest dependency hell they were having. A lot of Jest's decisions were made before we had a standard for packages and builds and even TypeScript. And as a result, making Jest work in a project, especially if you're using a builder it wasn't meant for, can be really rough. And a lot of the bindings to get Jest working in Vite were miserable to build, maintain, and integrate into your projects. Vitest was kind of started to challenge that. It was started obviously by Ant-Fu, the legend over in the Vue scene, and it has found a ton of success both in and outside of the Vite world. I know projects that are still using Webpack, even things that are using Next.js that use Vitest for their testing. There's an important catch though. As far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vitest doesn't do parallel testing really at all yet. So if you have a ton of tests you need to run, it's not the best solution for that. Could be wrong on that. I've just seen benchmarks and examples that scared me a bit there. But when it comes to the amount of time it takes to complete a given test or a series of tests in linear fashion, Vitest is hilariously fast. I will say Bun's testing stuff is really exciting too, and it's sad to not see them in this section, but between Vitest and Bun, I see a future where testing gets really, really good. Let's blast through these last categories quick because there's some cool stuff here. With desktop, Tori obviously won. Electron, still holding strong despite being around forever and not really being marketed particularly hard. Whales, I haven't seen. Build desktop applications using Go and WebTech. Melky, let me know if this is interesting and if I have to talk about it, because right now I have no idea. But with Tori being Rust and WebTech and Whales being Go and WebTech, it's cool to see other native languages building things like Electron. Because God, the bindings in Electron, the chaos of C++ and Node.jip is so miserable. If you're not familiar, the way you call native code in Electron is an ancient binding called Node.jip. A while back, Chrome was trying to rethink how the JavaScript would talk to the C++ native layer, and they built this thing called JIP as that interop. At the time, it seemed fine. And since Chrome was using it, NPM wanted to centralize on the same things Chrome used, so they introduced it as well. About a year later, Chrome moved off of JIP, and now Node is the major contributor and maintainer of this really obnoxious binding between C++ and JavaScript. And whenever I work in Electron, that's the thing that I hate the most and haunts me the most by far, especially since my last major experience with Electron was helping build the Twitch Studio desktop streaming app for recording and creating live videos and streams on Twitch. That meant that we were doing a lot of native interop between the JIP layer, the C++ layer, doing all the video encoding and shit, and the JavaScript layer that actually rendered the app. And it was miserable. It was really bad. Anyways, not familiar with Nativeify or Gluon. And again, let me know in the comments if I should be. Static sites. This is an interesting category, both because I don't like Next being in here. If you don't know this hot take, I do not like Next for static site exports. To me, Next is a server, not a build tool. And the build tools and the things around it that enable it to be static are just necessary evils to make the server part possible. The fact that it happens to allow for static export does nothing but make my life harder as I try to explain Next.js to people. Yes, having a static export makes it easier for a company that still hosts their web app out of S3, slightly easier to host said web app out of S3. I just don't think that use case is one that a framework like Next should be designed around, because Next is the server for React, not the build tool for React. And if you're not using Next with a server, you're not really using Next.js. And I know a lot of devs who think they've had meaningful experience with Next who are just using it as a build step to generate HTML files. I don't love that. So personally, I would love to see Next kill the static export, but then something like Nextra, which relies on it heavily, wouldn't make any sense at all. So I understand both sides. Astro, however, is a phenomenal solution for building static sites. We used Astro for the Create T3 app docs, and at the time they didn't have much tooling built for that, and we had to make a lot ourselves, which wasn't the best time. The result's a really nice multi-page app where all the pages are statically generated and served on a CDN. I'm really happy with the result for the most part, but we did have to go through some pain to get there. Thankfully, Astro's made a ton of progress with projects like Starlight to make it easier for people to spin things up like documentation. That said, stuff like Docusaurus and Nextra is still in a really good state. I don't know anything about the static experience with Next, so I don't want to comment on it too far, but I would assume it's similar to Next where they have a static export option, and as such, I would assume I wouldn't like it that much. State management. This one is really important because the top two here, you might notice the logo's the same. The reason for that is that Poimanders has fully taken over state in the React ecosystem. Poimanders is a team of incredible, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, Poimandres. I'll never get it right. I'm sorry, guys. Poimandres is a crew led by Paul Henschel. Paul's the creator of React 3 Fiber, the technology that lets you use React to render 3D components in the canvas using WebGL and 3JS. He's one of the smartest people I've ever had the pleasure of talking to. I've looked up to him since well before I even thought of doing YouTube, because he showed me that React can go so much further than simple little web apps. And part of how he proved that was building the tools he needed to do crazy things with React, including Zustand and eventually Jodi. Zustand is meant to be a minimal Redux alternative. It's super minimal, like 2 kilobytes for the bundle, if I recall. Sorry, I misspoke. It is 1.18 kilobytes. That's hilarious. Zustand is an incredible solution if you need a minimal state management library to make global state, selective state, and performance state possible in your React apps. I even use Zustand to build things like games because it's so performant and it makes it really easy to pull your code and pull your logic out of React, run it all externally, and just subscribe to changes within your React code. I love Zustand. I use it for things that both make sense and things that are absolutely chaotic. If you want to see all the crazy things I do with Zustand, let me know in the comments. Jodi is somehow both more flexible and way more minimal than Zustand. Jodi was originally created by Daishi, who's also a member of the Poimanders crew and now also the maintainer of Zustand, since Paul works at Vercel now and is focused on that. Jodi doesn't really compete with Zustand. I actually use both in a lot of projects at the same time because Jodi is really focused on atomic and composable state. So if we look at an example here, we have a count atom, we have a country atom, cities atom, and manga atom. These are now things we can call in our code with the use atom wrapper. So now that this atom exists, it's a value that is global. Anything that imports this and calls it via use atom is now sharing that state. So if 3 different components use this atom, they're now all sharing the state. You can also create derived atoms by using the get function in an atom definition to grab the value from another atom and then do something to it. This behind the scenes effectively creates a subscription to update this atom automatically when the other ones change. This effectively creates a subscription behind the scenes where when this atom here changes, this one will also change with it. And as such, in a different component, I can call doubled count as use atom, and now I have access to that. Since it's a derived atom, it's read only, so you don't have a set value. You have to set whatever it's derived from, but this lets you make some really powerful chains things. Like here we have a sum atom that gets the value from these 3 other atoms and adds them together. This is really cool stuff. And when you combine this with a lot of the other composability, you can make really cool things. One of the things I did with Jodi was a shared local storage atom. That atom would watch for browser events that trigger when your local storage changes from other tabs. So I could have values synchronized between multiple tabs at once automatically just using the hook. So cool. I love Jodi because it's so composable and the state of the ecosystem around it is dope. Since it's so minimal, you can throw it in alongside other state management solutions and not really have to worry about blowing up your bundle. Highly recommend Jodi. It's been a great experience for me. Check it out if you haven't already. Xstate's another one of those solutions that I just haven't dug into too much. We did explore it when we were building the more complex state machines for Ping, but what I found was that making 2 isolated Zustand state machines that had a good interop layer ended up being a better experience for us overall than trying to model all of the chaos of our system within Xstate. That said, I know they're working really hard on making Xstate simpler for the future, and that's exciting as hell to hear. Pinia is really interesting because it's not React at all, it's Vue. And the growth of Pinia has been really exciting to see because finally the Vue ecosystem has centralized on one state machine. It almost feels like what we had back in the day with Redux, where all React developers were using Redux some amount. Yeah, we needed to evolve past that. Vue kind of needed to go the other way to have a standard solution so the ecosystem could understand it and build around it. And Pinia is the official, so to speak, recommended state management solution for Vue. Really cool to see their success. I haven't dug into it too much beyond the meta around it, but it's cool to see them finding success. I also see Nano here. Nano Stores is really cool. I know Maple from our community is really into Nano Store. It's hilariously minimal and it works with a lot of different frameworks too, because of just how minimal it is. It's a basic subscription binding layer. It looks a lot like Jodi, if I recall. Yeah, you create an atom, then you make functions with it, and you can call those wherever you want to call them. Here's a React example. Admins is use store $admins. They recommend this $sign syntax for marking when something's an atom. I think it's pretty cool. You can do that in Jodi too if you want. Think of this as like a minimal multi-framework Jodi alternative. That's enough for state machines. Let's quickly talk about GraphQL and then wrap up. Interesting to see TanStack query at the top here because I don't really think of TanStack query as a GraphQL thing, but I'm sure people do use it for that. I was kind of hoping to see more GraphQL specific stuff here. Conclusion. Let's recap some of the stories and dramas of 2023. The Svelte codebase ditched TypeScript files while preserving type safety. Controversies around React, either too old or too complicated. Fall of Rome and the rise of Biome. Angular being rejuvenated. Bun v1. Astro 4. StyleX released and open source by Meta, as well as a bunch of AI tools. Pen down the summary for the 8th time. One can't help but wonder, could an AI overtake this task next year? Interesting. Curious about this foreshadowing. If you enjoyed this roundup, show your appreciation. And who knows, we might be back in a year for the 2024 Rising Stars. Thank you so much, Michael, the creator of Best of JS, who put all the work into this project. I love this. It's so cool having a single place we can go back to in the future and reflect on what was popular at the time. It is actually really fun going through older years and seeing how they compare to 2023. And if we could have possibly predicted the stuff that we saw succeed this year. I think this is all I have to say here. Appreciate you a ton for making this, Michael. Thank you for letting me react to it. I hope y'all love this as much as I did. And man, I'm excited to see what this looks like at the end of 2024. Till next time, good seeing you guys. Peace, nerds.